I'm going to discuss the pathogen invasion of innate and inflammatory responses. The innate immune system is mainly centered on physical and chemical barriers to infection. This is the body's first line of defense, so it's the main site of defense. And these physical barriers consist of things like the epithelial layers of the skin and the mucosal and the granular tissue surface. Mucosal are like the tears or sweat, things like that. The glandular, sorry, a little difficult to say. The glandular tissue surfaces are they line the respiratory and the gastrointestinal tract. They also recognize invading pathogens and activate antimicrobial immune response. They prevent infection by blocking these pathogens from entering the body. So that's their purpose. The chemical barriers. The chemical barriers, I think, are like just acid pH is an example of a chemical barrier. Other soluble substances that possesses antimicrobial activity. So those are two examples of chemical barriers. The important ability to successfully recognize and limit microbes early on in the innate immune system during infection is based on complement activation and phagocytosis and activation of various immune cells to ensure that the successful host defense mechanism against these pathogens. So to recognize it and to limit the microbes, early, to detect it early on before it can do any harm to the cell, you would need complement activation, phagocytosis, and activation of other immune cells. The activation of these various immune cells, it requires the right sensing of the pathogen. So before they can even go and attack these, they have to actually sense it correctly. They sense the pathogen associated molecular patterns, which is also known as PAMPs, PAMPs. That's the short term for it. They sense these PAMPs by a range of pattern recognition receptors. After that is followed by a signaling cascade, and this cascade results like in an inflammatory response or process. This inflammatory process have many different steps to it. So the inflammatory process, it recruits leukocytes, which are basically just white blood cells. It's another term for white blood cells called leukocytes. They recruit these leukocytes to the site of infection. Eventually, all of these events that takes place is going to lead to a adaptive immune response. So this will help to clear the infection. Once it leads to the adaptive immune response, it can help clear the infection. So basically, the evasion of these innate and inflammatory responses, they have to alter their PAMPs, which I discussed was the PAMPs was the pathogen associated molecular patterns. They alter them, and they exploit the whole cytoskeleton and membranous structures in order to gain access inside the affected cell. So they have to actually exploit the whole cytoskeleton and the membrane structures in order to even access the inside of an infected cell. An example of this is like HIV, hepatitis C. These things are serious viruses, and if we can, I feel like if we can understand the nature of the evasion strategies, if we can understand how they come in and invade, then I believe that we have the potential to uncover new targets and develop new ways of preventing these viruses. And if not preventing them, at least we can, know what to do when the problem arises. They can develop things to, I won't technically say cure it, but they can basically know what they're dealing with pretty much. They also interfere with host signaling cascade. I also described that. They interfere with this host signaling cascade by knocking off the balance between the positive and negative signals. They knock off the balance between these signals, and it throws it off a little bit. So again, HIV and hepatitis C is a good example of this. It's also other things, like I believe I saw that tuberculosis, was another one. A lot of pretty important things that in today's research we don't really have all the answers to, or either we don't have a cure for, or they still under investigation. So if we could further study these evading strategies, I believe that we could come up with a way to help these kind of viruses that are serious and detrimental to our health.